Hello, everyone, and welcome to English Pod. My name is Marco.
My name is Catherine, and today we've got an upper intermediate level lesson for you all about money.
That's right. We are trading money. We're actually negotiating in this very popular topic nowadays, the whole foreign exchange market.
Okay, so we're talking about currency, which is the money of different countries. For example, the currency of Ecuador is...
the US dollar. Yeah. Hard to believe, but true. I'll tell you all about it later.
Okay. Well, the currency of America is also the US dollar. So with that in mind, let's listen to today's dialogue.
Hey, John. I haven't seen you in ages. What's new? What have you been up to?
Pete, nice to see you. Well, on top of the norm, wife and kids and work, I've actually gotten into doing some trading.
Trading? You, big guy? What are you trading?
Currencies.
Currencies? As in euros, dollars, pounds, and rupees?
It's called Forex, foreign exchange. The great thing about it is that I don't have to invest a huge amount. I put in a margin deposit and then I can buy and sell up to 100 times that much.
I don't understand. You're buying and selling money?
You got it. Just last night I made $150.
Last night?
Yeah, it's a 24-hour market. I'd bought some renminbi earlier at a low asking price, but last night it appreciated drastically. So I made a split-second decision and sold all of my RMB at an amazing bid. I've also done some trading with Swiss francs and Australian dollars and Hong Kong dollars. I've made some good profits, but I've also suffered some losses. It depends on a lot of factors, just like any other market. In total, I've made about $500 in the past few months.
You're kidding! I'm on. Where do I sign up? All right, we're back. So this guy is trading currencies, as we heard. And, well, we're going to talk about a lot of the specific vocab that he used about this topic. So why don't we take a look at some of those now in Language Takeaway.
Language Takeaway.
Well, the first thing I think we should talk about is one of the first things that he says, actually. Peter says, I haven't seen you in ages.
I haven't seen you in ages, right. So, obviously, he hasn't seen him in a long time, and that's what in ages means.
That's right. So, we haven't seen each other in ages.
Mm-hmm. So, what other ways can we use in ages, or the word ages?
Well, you could actually say, it's been ages.
So that means it's been a long time.
It's been a long time, or we haven't gone out for ages.
Okay, so then you can use it with for ages.
For ages, in ages. So the key word here is ages, which means a long time.
Long time. Okay. And, well, he hasn't seen him in ages, and the guy's like, well, you know what? I've actually gone into trading.
So that means he started doing some trading.
Right. Now, trading is a very broad word because you can trade, as in this case, currencies, which is basically to buy and sell currencies.
But you could also trade stocks, right?
Mm-hmm. You can trade stocks, or even people that are involved in import-export. They are involved in trading.
Trading. So basically, trading is buying and selling something.
Right. So you're trading. You are exchanging a product for money, or money for a product.
But the difference is you're not actually making any products.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's called trading. You're not really manufacturing anything. You're just exchanging goods and services and money. All right, so that's for trading. Now, moving on, he was explaining how the foreign exchange market works, and he says, I don't have to invest a huge amount. I put in a margin deposit, and then I can buy and sell up to 100 times that much.
So, Marco, here's the question. What is a margin deposit? Because a deposit is basically money that you invest somewhere or that you pay in.
Right. Well, basically, a margin deposit is like a percentage. So he basically puts in a percentage of what he intends to buy. So, for example, a margin deposit of $1,000 might be $1 or $10.
Okay, so maybe if it's $10, you're talking about a 1% margin.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that's what he means by a margin deposit, and that's why he explains that you don't have to have a large amount of money in order to trade in the foreign exchange market. You just put in a margin deposit, and then you can work around that.
Well, it sounds pretty easy, but then he explains some more details about it, and it gets to be a little bit more complicated.
That's right. He explained about how he makes money and how he bought some Chinese renminbi, and then he sold it because it appreciated drastically.
So he bought it when it was cheap and he sold it when it was expensive. So the price changed.
Right.
So this kind of price change, when something goes from cheap to expensive, it's called appreciating. Appreciation. So the verb is to appreciate.
It's very different from using it in the sense of you appreciate someone, right? Like, oh, I really appreciate you.
Yeah, no, it's very different. We could say this about most goods or investments. For example, my parents bought a house in 1970, and the value of the house has really appreciated over the last 40 years. So now the value is much, much greater.
And actually, just mentioning it while we're on the topic, to appreciate, as you say, is something becomes more expensive. The opposite, when something becomes cheaper or maybe the value goes down, is to depreciate.
Depreciate. So that D at the beginning means it's going down.
Right. Okay, and moving on to our last word for language takeaway. So when he was talking about selling the Chinese currency, he said that he sold it at an amazing bid.
Okay, let's talk about bid here. B-I-D, bid. What does this mean?
So to bid is to place an offer for something.
Okay, so for example, at an auction, when someone is selling many old objects or some art, I can bid $100.
Right.
And maybe someone doesn't accept my bid. But if they do accept my bid, then I pay for it.
Right. So basically, a bid is just another way of saying an offer. You're offering a certain amount of money for that product or that service. And you see it a lot, for example, on eBay, right?
That's right. So eBay is an auction website, basically. And someone who's selling someone can see many, many bids, and they select the best bid.
Exactly. So that's what a bid is. So that's all we have for language takeaway. Let's move on now to Fluency Builder.
Fluency Builder.
Marco, what have you been up to lately? I never see you.
All right. This is actually a very common sentence. What have you been up to? But most English learners don't really understand what it means.
Well, this is a really interesting point because I say this all the time. This is very native, very colloquial. What have you been up to?
It's almost the same as saying, what's up?
What's up? Or where have you been recently? What have you been doing recently?
Right.
How's your life?
Right. So this part, up to, what have you been up to? It doesn't really say much if you translate it literally. But basically it's, what have you been doing? What have you been spending your time on?
So to be up to means to do something, to do.
Right. And there are many other definitions of up to, but in this case, what have you been up to means that. What have you been doing?
So next time you see a friend you haven't seen in a week or two, you can say, what have you been up to?
All right. And John answers, well, you know, on top of the norm, wife, kids, and work. That phrase right there, on top of the norm.
Well, the norm here means the normal. That means basically normal life. I've been working, I've got my kids, my wife, on top of the norm. Just life is normal.
Right. So the norm are the wife, kids, and work. On top of that, I'm actually getting into trading, right? So the normal situation, the normal life is wife, kids, and work. And then he's saying, on top of that, I've actually been doing this.
Exactly.
Okay. And now moving on to when he's explaining, again, the market and the currencies, he talked about an asking price.
Okay, asking price. This is, remember we were talking about bids? We could say that someone has an asking price, which is the price they would like to receive for an object or a service that they are selling. And so, for example, I'm going to sell my desk. My asking price is $100, $100. Maybe you don't want to pay that much, but my asking price is the way that I'm going to start. That's how much I want for it.
Right. So that's your asking price. That's how much you ideally want to sell it for, but you can negotiate. You are willing to accept maybe a lower offer.
Exactly.
Okay. And what is our last phrase?
A split-second decision. This is really, really important. These words go together very often. Split-second and decision.
Okay. So that basically means that you made a very quick decision.
That's right. Split second. Very fast. It's almost like it's less than a second. And so a split second decision means a decision in no time. It's very, very quick.
So we can actually mix split second with other things, right? For example, so maybe you can say he reacted in a split second and avoided the crash.
Okay, so good for him. He reacted quickly enough to avoid the accident.
That's right. So split second, very fast, very quickly. A split second decision, a decision that was made very fast. Okay, so that's all we have for Fluency Builder. Why don't we go back, listen to this dialogue one more time, and we'll be back to talk a little bit more. Hey, John, I haven't seen you in ages. What's new? What have you been up to?
Pete, nice to see you. Well, on top of the norm, wife and kids and work, I've actually gotten into doing some trading.
Trading? You, big guy? What are you trading?
Currencies.
Currencies? As in euros, dollars, pounds, and rupees?
It's called Forex, foreign exchange. The great thing about it is that I don't have to invest a huge amount. I put in a margin deposit and then I can buy and sell up to 100 times that much.
I don't understand. You're buying and selling money?
You got it. Just last night I made $150.
Last night?
Yeah, it's a 24-hour market. I'd bought some renminbi earlier at a low asking price, but last night it appreciated drastically. So I made a split-second decision and sold all of my RMB at an amazing bid. I've also done some trading with Swiss francs and Australian dollars and Hong Kong dollars. I've made some good profits, but I've also suffered some losses. It depends on a lot of factors, just like any other market. In total, I've made about $500 in the past few months.
You're kidding! I'm on. Where do I sign up?
So, Marco, you have to explain this to me. We're talking about currency today. So every nation has a currency. For example, in the dialogue, we learned that India has rupees.
Pounds are in Britain.
Britain has pounds, and Australia has Australian dollars. America has American dollars. But you just said earlier that Ecuador has American dollars too.
That's right. Actually, Ecuador went through a very difficult economic situation in late 1998, early 1999, where there was hyperinflation. So basically, there was an inflation that was very, very, very large.
So that means that the old currency lost its value very fast.
Exactly. So, for example, if the currency before in Ecuador used to be sucres. So if 10 sucres was $1, all of a sudden it was 50 sucres was $1.
Oh, wow.
So, and it got to the point where goods and services went from 3,000 to $1 to 25,000 to $1.
Oh, okay. So people have bags full of money and it's not really worth anything anymore.
Exactly. So what happened was the central bank couldn't absorb this currency depreciation. They couldn't really regulate prices. Obviously, salaries were about the same, so you have a lot less money comparatively. And so the government decided that there were two options. Either they would follow Argentina's example, what they did a couple of years before, and set a fixed rate. So in Argentina, it's 3 pesos to $1. Or we would just get rid of our currency and just use US dollars.
So that's what they did, right?
They use US dollars, and now if you ever travel to Ecuador, you will use US dollars. The same exact bills that you use in the US are the same exact bills in Ecuador.
So no need to exchange currency.
No need to exchange currency, and that's why I guess there are many factors that people say are a lot better. For example, trading has become a lot less complicated because now you're negotiating in US dollars as in everywhere else in the world. But then other things, as you know, not having a national currency also affect. So there are a lot of things going on, but it's an interesting topic.
Very interesting. Well, so maybe for those of you who are listening, you could tell us about your country and your currency. What do you use? What do you spend money on? And do people buy and trade currencies where you're from?
Exactly. Or maybe you can even enlighten us with the exchange rate. Maybe usually it's a good question to ask, how much is a liter of milk? Or how much is a haircut?
Right, because these are things that everyone needs, so the price doesn't change that much.
Exactly. We're really curious to know how inexpensive or maybe very expensive your country is.
In today's story, we'll uncover 5 powerful lessons about managing money. Lessons you might not learn in school but are crucial for achieving financial success. As we dive into Sam's journey, we'll also learn some new words and see how to use them in sentences. This will help us practice English in a fun and easy way. So, stay with us till the end. Once upon a time, in a bustling little town, there lived a 27-year-old man named Sam. One afternoon, he sat on the side of the road, lost in thought. Despite working hard for 5 years, his life hadn't improved. Sam wondered if there was a way to escape poverty and achieve true wealth. As he strolled by a grand mansion, something compelled him to step past the tall iron gate without permission. Little did he know, this daring act would lead him to a life-changing lesson about money. From afar, he saw an elderly man sitting on a garden bench with a cup of coffee in hand. This man was Mr. Hayes, the mansion's owner, a wealthy but humble and generous soul. Sam approached him, politely apologizing. "I'm sorry for entering without permission, Mr. Hayes." Recognizing Sam, Mr. Hayes was surprised by his sudden visit but welcomed him kindly, curious to know why he had come. Sam took a seat beside Mr. Hayes and began, "Sir, I've worked for 5 years, earning a decent wage, yet my life hasn't changed. I don't splurge, but I just can't seem to get ahead. Do you have any advice on how someone like me could become wealthy?" With a warm smile, Mr. Hayes replied, "Anyone can achieve wealth, Sam, including you." He continued, "I'll share 5 principles about money that you won't learn in school. Follow these carefully, and I assure you, you'll find yourself on the path to financial success." Eagerly, Sam listened as Mr. Hayes began. "The first rule," Mr. Hayes said, "is to spend less than you earn. This is the foundation. If you don't master this, you can't move on to the other steps. For example, if you make $5,000 a month, set aside at least $2,000. If it's $3,000, save $1,000. Avoid expenses that exceed your income, whether loans or gambling. Even with a 6-figure salary, without this rule, you'll remain in debt." Sam nodded thoughtfully, absorbing each word. Mr. Hayes took a calm sip of his coffee and continued. "The second rule is to have an emergency fund. Life is unpredictable. Car repairs, a leaky roof, or even layoffs can happen at any time. Without an emergency fund, you're forced to borrow or sell assets at a loss, which restricts your options and adds stress. Think of it as your safety net, protecting your finances when unexpected events arise." Sam nodded again, appreciating the wisdom in this approach. "Let's get to the third lesson, which is investing. Now, people like you might feel unsure about investing in a business or stock since you may not have much knowledge. So, the best investment you can make right now is in yourself." Curious, Sam asked, "How, sir?" Mr. Hayes continued, "Take your skill set, whether it's carpentry, plumbing, or customer service. Invest your time, energy, and money into mastering it further. Learn where your boss sources materials or explore ways to market your services better. Use some of your savings to improve your expertise, attend courses, buy tools, or read relevant books." Realizing the value of these words, Sam looked at Mr. Hayes with newfound determination, regretting he hadn't learned this sooner. Mr. Hayes continued with the 4th lesson. "Now that you're gaining skills, it's time to start earning more. Once you've honed your abilities, maybe you'll start your own business and your income will grow. You're no longer paid per hour but earn based on what you produce. The harder you work, the more you earn." The sky was getting darker, yet Sam felt no urge to leave. He was eager to learn the final principle. Mr. Hayes looked at him and said, "And finally, the 5th lesson, create passive income. When you've applied the first 4 principles, you should have extra money. Now, it's time to let your money work for you. You can invest in property, start a rental business, buy a franchise, or research other sources of passive income. Think carefully and choose wisely." "How about it, Sam? Are you ready to take on these lessons?" Mr. Hayes asked, Ending the conversation with a gentle smile. Brimming with excitement, Sam replied, "I used to just go to work, save a little, and hope for wealth to come my way. But I now understand that there's a real strategy, and I'm thankful, sir, for the invaluable guidance." Today we learned new words and sentences through this story about wealth and financial wisdom. Remember, learning English can be fun when you practice regularly. So, keep listening, learning, and growing. Make sure to like, comment, and share how this story helped you improve your English. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story, where we'll continue learning together.
The English Pod audio review. Listen to the meaning, then say the vocabulary word.
Something is usual or expected. Norm. The money that a country uses. Currency. The sum of money required to reinstate. Margin deposit. Taking effect rapidly. Drastically. Very quickly, just a second. Split second. An offer to pay a particular amount of money. Bid.
Let's try that faster.
The sum of money required to reinstate. Margin deposit. Something is usual or expected. Norm. Very quickly, just a second. Split second. An offer to pay a particular amount of money. Bid. Taking effect rapidly. Drastically. The money that a country uses. Currency.
Now say the word and hear it in a sentence.
Norm. What's the norm in this company concerning protocol? Norm. This is the norm, so you'd better get used to it. Norm. Delivery, McDonald's, and street vendors are the norms around here. Currency. Before I went to France, I had to change some of my Canadian currency into euros. Currency. What's the currency in this country? Currency. My country's currency is worth next to nothing in USD. Margin deposit. He decided to start with a margin deposit of GBP 100. Margin deposit. I can't believe that I can trade with USD 1 million deposit when I've only put in a margin deposit of USD 10,000. Margin deposit. One has to be careful with trading using a margin deposit because the risk of losing more money than one has are high. Split second. The gang members were closing in on me fast, so I made a split-second decision to run instead of fight. Split second. My heart pounded as I made a split-second decision and took hold of her hand. Split second. My split-second decision to try a trick on my bicycle in order to impress my friends didn't end well. Bid. The current bid ask for EUR USD is 1.3998-79. Bid. I bought euros at an ask of $1.4235 and sold British pounds at a bid of $1.5001. Bid. The bid for Japanese yen and the ask for Hong Kong dollars are really good right now if you trade in US currency.